Comix Watch. Comix Watch. Comix Watch.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Comix Watch. We're back, bees!
So good to be back, Nick.
But did a little bit of a hiatus, a little bit of a, mental cleaner. I had to get the nasty thoughts of Super Wonder out of my head.
Oh, stop it. You antis blame everything on Super Wonder or Zack Snyder. Jeez.
I'm not a Zack Snyder hater.
I'm only kidding, but continue, good sir.
So this week, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a discussion and probably talk about one of, if not the most important men in comics. Yep, that's right. We're not talking about Stan Lee. We're talking about Todd Mother effing McFarlane.
So we're talking about the Todd father.
Yes, he makes offers that you can't refuse.
Yeah. So how do you want to start this off?
All right. So Jared, can you kind of catch people up on, like, kind of give an overview of who Todd is, like how he came to prominence, and really what really brought him his fame? Kind of just do a quick overview.
What had happened is that he started off at Marvel, and what's interesting is that he started off as the Spider-Man artist, but he was so popular that they gave him his own Spider-Man book. It was the adjectiveless Spider-Man book, which is like, I've read the whole series. It's interesting. It's one of the examples of why artists shouldn't write books, but still, I'm like, But
so Jared,
Mhm.
I actually do have a video of J. Jonah Jameson reviewing the series.
Mm-hmm.
Crap, mega crap.
Yeah, but the book still looked good. So that's beyond that. So then what had happened was he started to notice something very interesting about Marvel, is that he for being one of the top published writers at Marvel, he wasn't getting fairly compensated, and that's true. It's a common problem with the industry. It's like he was like, can I at least get a copy of the T-shirt that you print Spider-Man on, or like my Spider-Man? And they wouldn't give it to him. So what had happened was he and Rob Liefeld were like, okay, so so how about this? Let's leave and do our own thing. Which back then,
Fine, I'll do it myself.
Back then, that was unheard of. Because remember, this is pre-Image. No one that previous to that, if you wanted to work at comics, you were working in the big two.
Yeah. Like the thing is, and to kind of add some extra context to this. So in like the late 80s, early 90s was kind of like when you saw the rise of like the rock star artist. So like Marvel and DC, they were more than happy to you like, oh, this book was done by Jim Lee. This book was done by Todd McFarlane, as a way to sell books. They were marketing these artists as a draw in their own right. Okay? But these artists, their names are being used to sell books, but they weren't seeing any percentage of it, Like, it's one thing, you do the books, you get paid. But when a company is literally using your image, your likeness, your reputation as a means to sell books, it's at that point you kind of deserve a bit of a cut.
Yeah. So what happened is that they decided they're going to leave. And then what's kind of funny, this whole story of the founding of Image is fascinating because it's all about right place, right time throughout the entire story. Because like they were at a conference, and then that happened to be attended by like Silvestri, Jim Lee, and then Jim Lee had his friends that showed up. So it was like, the way Todd tells it, he goes, I walked in with 3 people. I walked in that conference with 3 people. I walked out with 5. And these were the 5 that were drawing the most popular books at Marvel. These were no like small guys. It's like you had Jim Lee, who had drawn the highest selling comic book of all time, X-Men #1, which I believe it still has that record. So they went to Marvel and they're like, peace out. So they left. And what's kind of funny, they then went to DC. And DC originally thought, oh, they were defecting. They're coming to DC. We got Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane. Oh my gosh, yes. And then Todd literally goes, oh, we just came here to tell you we'll never come work for you.
And then literally 5 years later, Jim Lee's like, "Hi DC, I'm here to work for you."
I run this place. But the other
Well, that wasn't
funny
until 15
thing,
years later, but still.
DC had DC then countered with, hey, well, actually, why don't you talk to us? We made this new contract that's supposed to benefit creatives. So Todd asked, when you were coming up with that contract, did you consult any of the creatives? Silence. And he's like, exactly. Peace out. So
See,
then
that is when DC.
yeah.
That is when DC says, "What do you think we're doing right now?"
Yeah, exactly. And then they left and they made Image. Now the unique part about Image, the founding principles of Image were the company of Image would own only the Image eye and the Image logo, meaning that like Todd McFarlane, he owns Spawn. That's his own thing.
Yeah, what Jared is talking about is the concept of a creator-owned comic book company, which nowadays is extremely common. Which, by the way, the Phoenix Press is a creator-owned company.
Yeah.
So thank you, Image.
Ghost Machine is the same thing. But so then so he created Spawn, and Spawn like took the world by storm, let me put it to you that way. And then he was like, I believe he was in negotiations with Hasbro about like doing action figures. Now it's funny. So Todd shows up at a toy show. I don't know if you've heard this story, Nick. Do you know how he got the like action figure deal and all that, the distribution deal? So he showed up at those toy trade shows with just drawings of his action figures. That's it, just drawings. He didn't have prototypes or anything. So he shows up. So the president of like a big toy company, I forget what it was. I think it was like Toy Biz or something like that, or like Toys R Us. The point is, it's a big toy store. His son was with him too, and the son reads Spawn. So the son goes, "You have to hire this man. He's the creative Spawn."
That actually reminds me of, so later on, you know how they went and did the Spawn movie?
Yeah.
And they got Martin Sheen to be the villain of that. Martin Sheen, like a big actor. You want to know how Martin Sheen agreed to do Spawn? So he was at dinner one night, and he says like someone offered him Spawn, and I think it was like his grandson or his nephew said, "You're doing Spawn? That's the best comic ever!" And that is why he did Spawn.
That's great.
So when he said that story, I was like, "Oh, if I had a nickel for the only reason someone picked up a Spawn was because of their child, I'd have 2 nickels." But it's weird that happened twice.
Yeah, exactly. So then he creates Todd Toys, which was the original name for McFarlane Toys. He changed it to McFarlane Toys because I believe like Barbie was coming out with a toy called the Todd Toy, so he didn't want it to get confused, so he called it McFarlane.
Honestly,
Toys.
McFarlane Toy sounds better anyway.
It does. Now, here's the thing. Previous to this, yes, action figures were getting better in terms of likeness. But when McFarlane's toys came out, I have a couple, by the way, right here at my shelf. So here's Ben Affleck from the Snyder Cut. They looked like this.
I'll be right back. I'm gonna go grab some toys. Keep talking, buddy.
Yeah. So this was like one of the first times that like the toys looked like they jumped off the page. Like legit, they look like they were like from the IP, because like I said before, yes, toys were getting better. It's just they look close to what they were supposed to represent, like the Star Wars figures, but they were nowhere near as developed and as like detailed as McFarlane action figures. So in a way, McFarlane is credited with creating the premium action figure market.
So okay, I'm gonna full screen myself.
Yeah,
all right. So here is a classic TMNT. Let's see what the copyright date is. 1988. Oh, this is vintage. Oh, this is vintage. This is a vintage.
So that
figure.
was from when you were 200 years old. 200,000.
No, but so this is from 1988. Okay, roughly around the same, like probably about 5 years prior to Todd, but this is kind of a good example of what toys were back then. Okay,
Yeah.
like decently detailed. You know, like articulation is not the best.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's okay. Like it's an okay toy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love playing with these as a kid, but yeah, this is vintage. Holy crap! I better be more careful. That's like a first run.
Take care of those,
Um,
dude. Take care of those, dude.
Now, if you want something that's a little more closer, here is a Ninjetti figure from Power Rangers season 3. So I'd say like 94, 95,
Mhm. Yeah.
maybe. Yeah, and it's like, all right, trying to get this. Like it has a kind of a karate chopping action. Is that like?
And a kung fu grip.
Yeah, like got some decent molding. He got some more articulation here. He got like some action-y stuff. You know, like actually, if you look at it, the molding is actually not bad.
Mm-hmm.
But still, Jared, why don't you show what Todd was doing?
Yeah. So first off, I got Cyborg right here, played by.
Do you have any older Todd toys?
I actually do. So here's an interesting story about me. I was collecting McFarlane toys before I knew who Todd McFarlane is, because I'm a Halo fan, and from Halo 3 to Halo 4, I think he had the license. So here's an example. Actually, here's his Master Chief from Halo 3.
Okay, that's probably a better approximation of what, like, show the articulation if you could.
Like it does this. The wrist moves.
I can't. Your camera's you're too far down. Please.
Yeah,
all
there
right.
you go. So
yeah,
there's that.
Show, like, wait. I need to show the articulation. You're too far down the screen. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see how the articulation's a lot better. Also, hold it up to the camera. I want to be able to see the details.
Like, look at this one. This is a Brute Chieftain. And it's like,
look at the details on that.
These were the action figures that legit looked like they were from the game. Because previous to that, yeah, Halo had action figures, but they weren't as like ridiculous as that. And then he even had scale vehicles like the Warthog that you could actually put the figures in.
What?
Yeah. You could have a dude riding, a dude in the turret, a dude driving. It's really cool.
Yeah, and so like Todd not only moved the comic book industry forward, he also moved the toy industry forward. So Jerry, can you show us like some of Todd's comics, please?
Yes, as a matter of fact. So I have.
So, do you have the Marvel app?
Oh yeah, I'll pull that up. Hang on 1 second. Let me do that.
First off, can you pull up his Hulk run? Kind of see where like he kind of started.
Let me see if it'll come up. So let me see this. So in the meantime, while I find this, old man it up.
So yeah, Todd McFarlane is kind of one of those people who just kind of came on the scene all of a sudden and instantly made the moves. And to go on with Jared, like right time, right place. This was during the comic book boom. Like this was right in the middle of the speculation boom. I deposit that if Image had started at any other time, they would have failed because like the Image comics, those first issues sold like crazy. Let me look up Spawn.
So this is the best that I can do right now. But so here's what like his Hulk run and the art looked like. I'll even zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, I think that his Hulk run is really when he like it's not his first thing, but I think that's like his first time he came on the radar of people.
Yeah. And then he was so popular that they gave him his own Spider-Man run, which this is what really made his name in terms of comic book fans. It's like most of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man poses that Peter is in like those movies is him. He was the first to have this like frayed web, and then it was kind of funny is that people would ask him, "Why does the web look that way?" He's like, "Why not?"
Yeah, the story is so he calls it spaghetti webbing because up until then the webbing had been drawn the same way it had been done since the 60s, you know, like lines and crosses, and because he wanted to be able to shoot the webs at the camera. Okay. And the way that had been drawn since the 60s didn't really allow for that. And so he basically did it that way, where basically creating ropes on the spot. And his editor at the time, I think it might have been Tom DeFalco, said, "Will you please stop that darn spaghetti webbing?" He's like, "Oh, cool, I got a name for it now."
Yeah.
And that's straight from the Todd Fowler's mouth. That was.
And by the way, he is also the co-creator of Venom, which makes sense when you consider how similar Venom is to Spawn.
I mean, let's be honest, he's pretty much the creator, because like, who's the other co-creator? Can you actually name him?
David Michelini.
Yeah, nobody cares. Sorry. Nobody cares. He's the co-creator of Venom, but he is essentially the creator of Venom because nobody cares about the other guy.
Yeah, I mean, but look at the detail on this. And you know what's kind of funny? In the Image, when they were forming Image, his were the only books that actually arrived on time. Everyone else was like massively delayed.
And I think that is part of Spawn's success, is the books were actually coming out every month, and it was on time and quality. And I think like people like regular stuff, especially during that age. By the way, Spawn #1 sold 1.7 million copies.
Good God, man. Yeah, so check this out. He also is responsible for Spawn having a massive cape.
So Todd has a phrase that he lives by: "When in doubt, black it out." Okay, and if you look at anything Spawn related, he definitely took that rule to the extreme. Like he's talked about, like, his dream image for Spawn is like Spawn's jumping over the city, and like the page is like 90% black, and like all you see is his eyes and like a silhouette. Like that's like his dream thing. It's like that just tells you everything you need to know about Spawn.
Yeah. Now, that's not to say he didn't have any controversy. Like, so here's the again, to remind you guys about the rule of Image is that if you create a character, you then own that character. So Neil Gaiman took over for like a couple of issues writing Spawn, and he invented a character known as Angela. And he got into legal disputes with Todd about who owned Angela.
I'm like, even though Neil was technically in the right, he was kind of a butthole about that.
Yeah. And then, so he won the lawsuit. He won the rights to Angela. He just sold the rights to Marvel.
Yeah, that was just a dick move. I'm sorry. That was just...
Yeah. And so for those that don't know, that's how Angela ended up in the Marvel universe.
Oh, a quick tangent. What if Marvel goes to Image and be like, "Hey, Todd, could you take up like the production of Marvel Comics? I'll do it on one condition. Give me the rights to Angela back."
Well, here's an interesting story about that. Well, first off, part of McFarlane's line are what's called page punchers. So what they are, it's an action figure, but also comes with a comic book that he actually produces. So, and they're actually really good. So that led to a lot of people thinking, is Todd going to take over DC, which would be very interesting. But so what would kind of put a wedge between him and the Image founders, particularly Liefeld and Lee, is that at a certain point, Marvel was doing this. Marvel was struggling to compete with Image. So their idea was, let's have the Image guys come and write and draw our stuff. So that's where you get like the infamous Rob Liefeld Captain America picture.
Oh, that was the Heroes Reborn initiative.
Heroes Reborn. And I remember that there was a story of they were doing an Image Comics panel, and then a fan asked a question to Rob and Lee about Heroes Reborn, and then Todd goes, "You want to hear about Heroes Reborn? You go to a Marvel panel. We're here to talk about Image Comics only."
I mean, fair play, but he could have handled that better.
Yeah, but so that's where you get Heroes Reborn and the really, really, really strange Captain America picture.
Yeah, and then I think that's also kind of like, when did DC buy Wildstorm? Like that's that. Like I know we're trying to talk about Todd McFarlane, but like I'm kind of curious now.
And by the way, that was a big thing. It was actually interesting is that the rumor leaked earlier than was announced. In other words, there was a rumor, and I think it was Wizard that Jim Lee had sold out to DC, and then the Image guys had approached him, and he goes, "No, it's 100% false." And then later he said, "Yeah, I lied. That was true." So it was sold in, I believe, 2010. Oh wait, hang on. Due to declining sales.
2010.
Hang on.
Jim Lee was back working at DC as
Oh
early
yeah,
as like
98.
Yeah, that sounds about
he
right.
sold Wildstorm to DC in 98.
Yeah, I think honestly, well, I know we're supposed to talk about Todd, but I gotta say that was probably a really good move by DC because remember Jim Lee drew a lot of really good DC comics in the early 2000s, like Hush.
Yeah, exactly. No one can
New
and
52.
reportedly, Jim Lee says he plans on he has one more good Batman story he wants to draw.
Yeah, but getting back to
Yeah.
Todd McFarlane, the thing that I admire about Todd is, unlike a lot of other comic creators, he's actually a rather genius businessman
Yeah.
who happens to also be one of the greatest comic book artists ever.
Yeah, exactly. It's like EVS took heat once for saying that a lot of indie comic book people aren't like good business people, and you know it's kind of funny.
That's
McFarlane
kind of like the pot calling the kettle black. Like
well,
EBS
yeah, but I was saying McFarlane
he's
is a
right,
reputation.
but at the same time, sorry.
But so did I tell you that there's this fantastic quote by Todd McFarlane that, of course, got blown out of proportion by certain people that have political agendas. So he was being interviewed. So he was being interviewed on a toy review show, and one of the questions he was asked was about doing an all-female line of action figures. First off, he said, "Yeah, I can do that, but it would have to be a McFarlane site exclusive because here's what happened, because it's not going to move off the pegs in the store." And then here's where he got heat. You ready? So he says, "Imagine this. Imagine your kid does like great in school, so you decide we're going to reward you. We're going to get you an action figure. So you go, you take off the peg, and you give it to him. And you got, oh, it's a girl action figure. Yeah, mom and dad, thanks, but did they have any like robots? Oh yeah, they had plenty of robots. Any soldiers? Yeah, you should have seen the pegs." And then he goes, "And you got me the girl action figure." And then Todd goes, "Now I don't know if this is true or not, but at a certain point, serial killers begin." That's the greatest McFarlane. That's my favorite McFarlane quote like ever.
Yeah, because I know we like, because I feel like Todd's comic accomplishments kind of kind of like speak for themselves, but I feel like a lot of people don't really understand just how much of an impact Todd had on the toy world.
Yeah,
because Todd McFarlane, you know what? I'm going to be hyperbolic. Todd McFarlane invented the adult toy market.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you this: there would be no Hot Toys here were it not for McFarlane creating
Hasbro Legendary Collection, like
Marvel Legends.
All of the adult toy lines we get are because Todd McFarlane. Because yes, Todd Toys hopped on because the toy market was really freaking big, in the 1990s, and Todd hopped on that wave, and that helped him a lot. That was a right time, right place situation. Okay.
Yeah.
But you got to have the know-how to capitalize on first and foremost. Todd knew the toy market.
And it was also around the time because he proved that adult collectors will buy action figures, because previous to that, the reason why no one put any effort into it is because they thought only kids were buying toys.
Yeah. So another thing that I always kind of admire about Todd is he's purchased some really interesting collectibles. So you know how like in the 90s they had like the home run race with like Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. He purchased Mark McGwire's, I think, 66 home run ball. And then he later purchased Barry Bonds' 70th home run ball because he's a huge baseball fan.
Yeah.
All right. I love the story where it's like when he gives it to people, they treat it like glass. He just like bounces it on the floor and whatnot. It's like He paid $3 million for that baseball, and he's
Because
like,
you know what it is? It's a status symbol. He's like, yeah, I'm legit. Also, mind you, he has a world record. It's the first, because Spawn is the first indie comic to go 300 issues.
yeah, like I know it's kind of hard to like. Spawn technically is an indie comic.
Mm-hmm.
I would classify it now as more of like a second or third party comic because like you got your first party stuff, which is like Marvel and DC. Then you got your second your second party comics like Dark Horse, Image, and that kind of like third party is more of like your license houses like Dynamite, IDW.
Yeah.
These are my own classifications, by the way. And then you have indie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that's just
in terms of indie, I mean non-big two.
Agreed. And yes, like and Spawn was a merchandising powerhouse in the 90s. The fact that it got created in 92 and then had a film in 96 or 97 is crazy. Which
not only a film, an HBO animated series, which is dope, by the way.
I've seen the first season of the animated series. It is indeed dope. And I'm just gonna say this: the Spawn movie is not the worst thing ever. Like,
no, it's not. We even reviewed it on Comics League, and really, for what it is, it's actually pretty cool.
It should have been rated R, yes, but for what it is, it's like a 7.5 out of 10 movie.
Yeah, I would give you that. It's nowhere. Like put it this way, it's no Blank Man. Thanks, by the way, for making me watch that for April Fools.
I've been trying to get you to watch that for a while. But, oh, I love you so much. But yeah, so I guess so let's kind of answer the question. Do you think he's more important than Stan Lee?
Let me put it to you this way. Yes and no. What I mean by, in terms of yes, I do say that there is less ambiguity over what he created and what he was just the front man of, because there's always been like a dispute over who really invented Spider-Man, Thor, and all those characters, because like the Marvel method, if that was really Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, and it was just filled in by Stan Lee. But with McFarlane, it's pretty much all McFarlane.
Yeah, and my answer is for every age of comics, there is one person or like maybe a couple people who really help usher it in. For the golden age, you have people like Bob Kane, Bill Finger, the actual person.
Bill Finger, the actual creator of Batman. Thank you.
You have Jack Kirby. But for the Silver Age, I think the two most important people of the Silver Age are Julius Schwartz. He's the editor who basically brought DC into the Silver Age. And on the Marvel side is Stan Lee.
Yeah. And think about
but for the modern age, for the modern age of comics, I think we can solely rest that on Todd McFarlane, because if you look at comics in the 70s and the 80s, like in the 80s they were starting to change because of the direct business model, but they still somewhat operated like they have for like the past 30 years. Todd brought comics into the modern age.
Yeah.
The way we see comics, the way we treat them. I think like Todd, and by extension Image, because like not only did Image like change comics in the 90s, in the early 2000s they changed comics. Like the stuff that Image did in the early 2000s, we're still feeling the effects of it today. Because remember, Walking Dead, Invincible, came out in the early 2000s. So like we're still feeling the aftershocks of stuff that the one of the greatest editor-in-chiefs of Image, and it's not Eric Larson.
Well, yeah, but the other thing, I will say this: Todd McFarlane is the modern day Stan Lee, and what I mean by that, because Stan Lee, God rest his soul, was the hype man of comics. He was like the one. He was like the adult that they used to tell you it's cool to like comics and stuff and to like pop culture. Todd is that for now, because he's doing all this dope stuff. He's packaging them with action figures. He's making stuff cool again. In other words,
see, my criticism of Stan Lee is he did great stuff in the 60s. The stuff he did in the 60s is iconic.
Yeah.
No
No dispute.
The problem is, starting in the 70s, he really pulled back from comics and became a figurehead. By the 80s, he was fully a figurehead. Like, he did some stuff here and there. But by the 80s, so basically most of us, we grew up with Stan Lee as more of a figurehead than a creator.
Oh, come on, Nick. We all know you're older than that. I'm just kidding. But yes, exactly. Thank you. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I understand that. I mean, see, here's the thing. I wouldn't say that McFarlane is more important than Stan Lee. I would just say that they both were important for their time.
Yeah, like you can make like we can argue who's more important, but I think the consensus that we can agree on is that Todd is at least just as important as Stan Lee.
Yeah, and nowadays he is the Stan Lee like figurehead who's out there drumming up excitement about comics.
But I'm just talking about like
Yeah.
overall in the course of comic history. You
Yeah.
know, comparing them to everyone. Like
100%.
Todd McFarlane is right up there with Jack Kirby, Bill Finger, Stan Lee. Literally, when you talk, if there's like a top 5 comic book creators of all time, Todd is on that list, and he's probably in the top 3.
Yep, exactly. I agree with you on that.
By the way, my top 3 comic book creators who have had the most influence, and this is in no particular order: Stan Lee, Todd McFarlane, Jack Kirby.
Mine are Stan Lee, McFarlane, and actually, you know what? Yeah, it's the exact same 3 because all those 3 guys. Now, if I can extend that to 5, it'd be Frank Miller and Julius Schwartz.
Okay, if we're gonna extend it to 5, I put Julius Schwartz in there as well. For my 5th one,
The reason why I say Frank is because to give you guys an idea of what Frank did, Batman was gonna be canceled before he did Dark Knight Returns.
I would argue Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, their version laid the groundwork for Frank Miller's
Groundwork,
Batman.
yes, but with Dark Knight Returns getting all this media attention, obviously also bolstered by the '89 movie and the Denny O'Neil run. But
Well,
I'm saying
actually, Dark Knight Returns was the catalyst for '89.
yeah, but what I'm trying to say is the media attention that book got showed people. It's basically exposed the general populace to like how the character had grown in many ways because of Danny O'Neil and Neil Adams. In other words, it more mainstreamed it because everyone's like, oh, Batman actually is this cool badass and not this campy Adam West guy.
Yeah. I was gonna put Danny O'Neil in the top 5, but he's probably more in the top 20. Like if we're gonna talk about like most important comic people, which by the way, that's probably gonna be a separate episode. Like
And by the way, he certainly is not in terms of Wonder Woman. Because remember, he was the one that took away her powers and made her a karate star.
All right, so the next episode of Comix Watch, we're talking about the most important people in comics ever. That's it. I'm sorry.
All right, there you go. That works.
All right. But yeah, so Jared, and can you like basically as we close this out, what does Todd McFarlane mean to you? Like how does his stuff mean to you?
Well, for one thing, he's the reason why he was part of the reason why I got so into Halo, because of like the toys were like legit, like 100, like 1-to-1 recreations of the things. It's not like you get a toy and it looks vaguely like what you're seeing on the screen. No, it's legit. Like he even had the Flood action figures, and they looked as terrifying as they do on the movie, in the not the movie, in the game. And then it's like when you get to like the DC characters now with like the Snyder Cut League, it's like a lot of, and plus my dad collects Todd McFarlane because he collects the sports figures. So it's like in many ways, before I got into comics, I was very much in the Todd McFarlane business.
Yeah, so for me, Todd's comics, in particular Spawn, What the reason why I think Spawn has kind of stood the test of time is it's actually kind of a good story. Like the idea of a guy who was a mercenary who wanted to be a better person, gets sent to hell, and he wants to see his wife one more time, and in order to do that, he has to go to the deal. Like it's actually a very good premise.
You left that one detail. He gets sent back 10 years later.
Exactly, and it's like yes, it has shock value, but the thing is, the comic is built on very the foundation of the story is exceedingly solid. Like it is a very solid premise.
Hence why it lasted this long and has expanded into like this massive world, because now you have medieval Spawn, gunslinger Spawn, she Spawn. All those are really cool, by the way.
Yeah, like it's kind of one of those things where it's like it's a very like what it like the house the house the Spawn is built on is built on extremely good ground, and I think that's why it's like it's a good premise, and the best comics are the ones that apply universal themes. Like we can all imagine, like, oh, we go to hell, and like I just want to see Jared one more time to play a trick on him or whatever.
I'm like, no. But fun fact, I will say, Donny Cates' comic book imprint is called KLC, Kids Love Chains, because that's a McFarlane quote. Someone asked him, why does Spawn have so many chains? And then Todd goes, kids love chains. He knew, because here's the thing. Here's why. He knew what people liked, because for so long.
Wait, Jared. You don't give people what they want.
I know, right?
That you're a bigot. How dare you want to give the audience what they want? You shove that DEI right down their throats.
But the other thing that's actually really interesting about that is that when he was drawing Spider-Man, they would tell him, you can't draw it this way. You can't break the panels, the borders of the panels and stuff. That's not the way we do it. And then Todd would actually go, and that's working out swimmingly for you, isn't it? And he was the top selling Spider-Man artist. So he's like, eventually he's like, just shut up and let me do what I do.
It's like, are you the top best-selling artist in the industry right now? Like,
you kind of need me, so. Because that's the thing. The reason why Todd's Spider-Man was so good, the reason why Todd's art, the reason why Image's art was so good, was so like beloved in the 90s, because guess what? It did not look like anything coming out of the big two.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna wrap it up here, and if you got this far, please give us the like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Are you a fan of Spawn? Do you think he's more important than Stanlee? It's Wonderbat, the best ship in comics. So anyway,
or Maxabat.
But anyway, this has been Nick from the Phoenix Press, and remember, Wonderbat is canon.